This is Out Loud and Laughing.
What is up, Chosen fam? Welcome back to the studio where the vibes are high, the tea is hot, and today the bank accounts are about to get a serious glow up. We've all been there, avoiding our banking app like it's an ex at a circuit party, or telling ourselves that budgeting is just something that happens to other people. Well, today's guest is here to tell us that being good with money isn't just for the straights. It's actually a radical act of queer joy. He's a personal finance columnist for Out magazine, a former professional French horn player turned marketing maven, and the author of the essential new book, Money Proud. Please welcome to the pod the man making financial independence look as good as a tailored suit, Nick Wollney. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Y'all are giving such good face on this intro. I feel so welcome.
We're just following your lead, Nick.
Okay, I'll take
We
it.
we are so happy to have you here. And as Brian mentioned, we've been diving into Money Proud. And one thing that personally struck me was how you describe personal finance as a spiritual journey. You're very open about your own dog shit moments in the book, from doing your taxes wrong, getting audited, and burning through life savings. So the question is for our chosen family who feels like they personally might also be in that dog shit phase, how do we stop the money malaise and start feeling proud of our own coins?
So one thing that came up in this book process is that I don't have the background that most people have when they go into personal finance authorship. It usually goes something like, I became a millionaire at 25 and these are the three things that I want everyone else to know. And for me it was kind of the opposite situation. It had fucked up every little thing in the book. I've kind of stumbled my way through my 20s and beyond and all of that. And what I found over time is that after a while, I just felt pulled in a lot of different directions. And how I ended up in personal finance is I became a finance editor. I was hired in to cover small business and entrepreneurship and gig economy and things like that. Um, and I ended up learning almost through osmosis a lot of those nuts and bolts of personal finance over the years that unless your parents teach it to you, you don't really learn too much of it for yourself. And so I wanted to bring that relatability into the book and kind of just into my work in general, that if you're like me and you have not been taught exactly how everything works in terms of money and investing and saving and all of that, and maybe you have some bullshit for yourself to overcome over time. I know for me, I had to unlearn a lot of things in terms of how my family perceived money, how my parents perceived money. My parents got divorced because of money. Unlearning a lot of those things and unwinding a lot of those things, I think is what happens for a lot of people. And you have those dog shit moments where you have something that doesn't go your way financially, you have a sudden setback. For me, when I went into business, when I went into working for myself, my first year, I ended up getting audited later on my taxes, and it was something small. It was not really an expensive mistake, but if you have not been audited by the IRS before, they are quite behind in their mail. So they send you the first notice, and you're like, oh, okay, and then you pay it, but they haven't gotten that yet. So you get notice after notice after notice, and it's just the stress. And I'm like, I already
Yes.
took care of this. I already took care of this. So different things like that, that I just wanted to share and make people feel comfortable with so that they can either get on that journey or get back on that journey to learning those nuts and bolts of finance. And I think to do it in a way where it's not so, uh, it doesn't feel so restrictive. I know for us as queer people, there's a desire to seek joy now or to seek community now, particularly if you are escaping an unwelcoming environment, things like that. There are bigger priorities than getting that cushy emergency fund. It's about survival for many people for a period of their lives, and so determining how you can balance those things, how you can enjoy yourself in the present while also making good money decisions for your future.
I like how you talked a little bit about, how we like to spend money on fun, because I agree. I think there's also a level of being responsible. And you also talked a little bit how you stumbled in your 20s. And I think listeners would like to honestly know, like, a little more about you, Nick, and your background. Like, how did you stumble in your 20s? How can that be relatable? Because I think some of us use the credit card and forget, oh, wait, shit, I have to pay that back, or take out a loan, or go buy something that I probably don't need because I got a bonus check and I didn't think I could maybe invest some of it or put some of it away. how did you stumble in your 20s and what was your aha moment?
Yeah. Oh my god, how much time do we have? Well, let's see. So I went to college, as you had mentioned in the intro, I went to college for classical French horn, which is, shockingly not the most employable degree that you could
No?
graduate, university. I know. And I graduated in 2009 and there was the recession going on. And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get another one of these. So I have a master's in classical music. The reason I got into that field was partially because of my sexuality and my queer identity, where I grew up closeted and in the rural Midwest and playing music and being the band nerd and stuff like that and learning about music and learning about the arts was one of the only times where I felt like I could creatively express myself. And so I think it just had this like outsized effect on my young adulthood. And so I got out of that. I got to the end of that field of study and I was like, "Okay, you know what? I love this, but I like myself now. This is different. I actually like myself." So it doesn't have quite the allure that it used to. And so I just went into this odd jobs phase that I think a lot of us go through where you have graduated from school. We very much prime young people that college is everything, that getting into college is everything, that there's quite a lot of positioning and hyping teenagers up to go to school and things like that. And then you get done and you're like, oh wait, what's this? Why am I working as a barista? Why am I working at this plant shop? Why am I, driving DoorDash? This was not in the plans. And so in that odd jobs phase, there was a little bit of self-loathing in that. It was like this was not what I was supposed to be doing. I have a lot of student loans, and I how am I going to pay all these off? Things like that, and just kind of catastrophizing on a lot of that. Another thing that happened is years later when I found my footing in marketing and particularly in copywriting. I've been a writer for about 10, 12 years. And I always loved writing. It's a craft, I think it's similar to music in that regard, something to study and something to learn from and improve. But I was like, you know what? I think I can do this freelance full time. I'm just gonna go for it. And I quit a perfectly good job. I quit that salaried job in order to go into business for myself. I watched, probably one too many hypey hustle videos one night and just like, "Fuck
I
it,
could
I'm
do
gonna do
this.
it." Yes, you know how it is. Yeah, you just get a little
Shark
bit too
Tank.
excited. Exactly, yes.
Shark Tank.
Yes, yes. One Shark Tank marathon later, and then all of a sudden, turn it in my notice. And I had some entrepreneurial skill sets, but I didn't have others. I didn't have, that selling skill set. Like you got to go and get those clients. You got to go and get that money. And so all of the money I had saved up up until that point, I ended up burning that down in the first year. It was really, really devastating. And so I think as we get older, and perhaps you both agree, but we're still all young bucks on this call.
We're hoping.
I think it's like you make mistakes and then you recover from the mistakes. And then you're like, "Okay, that was not as destructive or as apocalyptic as I thought it was gonna be." So yeah, those were a couple of the big ones for me. It's just I don't know, I think a lot of Money Proud and a lot of my book is about developing resilience and developing agility because no matter what you're doing for work right now, it's probably going to change in a few years. I think those days of doing one thing your entire career are mostly over. Technology is just changing too quickly. Industries are changing too quickly. And so a lot of the book focuses on how you can build that resilience, career resilience, and then also what you can be doing with your money to ensure that if you do get into a situation where you get laid off or you have some kind of a setback, that you've got some cushion, that you have some optionality, in case things come up.
Thank you for sharing all of that. It truly sounds like you've overcome so much, and I think that's one of the main themes about our podcast is that we celebrate all of the things that we overcome. If you were to sort of take the opposite of money proud, right? The opposite to me sounds like money shame, and there's this idea about financial shame in the world, and then you layer that in rather into being a gay person who's already sort of surviving. You've touched on that as well, and then you put in this idea of financial shame. It just starts to feel like too much. So can we talk about how that shows up a little bit?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think there is that I'm really interested in the triangle between, uh, queer identity, shame, and finances. I feel like there's a lot of crossover. Certainly with money, there is a lot of shame in general. That I'm supposed to have more of it, or you know, it. I joked in another interview that we'd rather send each other our nudes than reveal each other's checking account balances.
The
Like
truth.
it's just like this absolutely like terrifying thing. Kind
It's
of
also easier to snap a pic down, Nick, and log into your bank account.
I know you gotta pull up this you gotta take the screenshot otherwise. So it's less mobile on top of all that. But yeah, but I think that I think another piece of it is, uh, a lot of the personal finance creators and a lot of, like, the influencers and media, and even shows in years past, the entertainment value is built around shame. If you think like budget teardowns is a really popular type of, interactive, finance media or, what a creator would create. I kinda went back and forth on, do I wanna do something like that? And I just feel like so often the entertainment value goes to shame. It goes to shaming of that person. "You're spending this much on that, and you're not here, and you're how old?" Blah, blah, blah. And it's like you kinda don't know what's going on with people. You don't know what's going on with them in their lives, professionally and also personally, and what kind of setbacks they might have had, and things like that. Um, and so for so many of us, it's really easy to just sweep it all under the rug, just pretend it's not happening. So we rip the band-aid off on that right at the start of the book. The first chapter of the book is about mindset, called Thought Patterns, and it just kind of looks at, what are some of your behaviors around money. Do you numb out? Are you a person who numbs? Are you a person who avoids? Uh, if you went on a bender last weekend or the last, 4 weekends in a row, and you're afraid to look at your bank account, you're afraid to even just see what you did. There's definitely a feeling around that that's just like, ugh, I shouldn't have done that. And it causes people to spiral. I also talk about in the book something called money malaise, which is similar to avoidance and numbing, but I think slightly different. It's this kind of it's like a more existential thing. It's where it's like, oh, well, there's not going to be a planet in 50 years, so why should I bother saving for retirement? You know what I mean? It's like it's a little darker and it's a little,
Yeah,
just like, okay, well, this country's going to shit, so like, why should I even bother?
it
Just
is.
YOLO. I mean, it is, but you know what I mean? It's like there's like a decision you have to make where it's like, okay, I'm gonna stop digging myself deeper into that financial hole that I'm digging myself into. Um, and this applies to people with low income and applies to people with who are middle class. It's something that is behavioral, really interested in just behavioral finance and how things like shame play into that. And for queer people, we're navigating shame. There's so much vitriol around it, just in our news cycle and all of that. So we're navigating it. It's a chronic stressor. It affects our ability to regulate our behavior and regulate our emotions.
Mm,
It wears us down and it keeps us broke. So it's really important that we be
well said.
diligent. Yeah,
Mhm.
to be diligent with all of that and have fun along the way, just be
Yeah.
mindful of making those good decisions, but also being intentional about if you know that the next time Charlie XCX goes on tour, you're getting floor seats no matter what, like, you're doing it, right?
Yeah.
Then start saving for that. Like,
Right.
just start putting
Plan.
some money now, and then you can get those kick-ass floor seats, and you're not having to throw down a credit card or to be like, "Oh god, my credit card's maxed out. What am I gonna do?"
Mhm.
But just a little bit of proactive energy can be a big help.
So well said. We have more questions about the book, but I do have a quick question because obviously you have this background in classical music. We talked about the French horn, which I think is so amazing, but you have also said that you found a way to like transfer skills, right? From this French horn kind of career into what you're doing today. And so for anyone listening who's a quote unquote starving artist or feels like their annual income just isn't enough, especially in our community, like what's the first step to realizing that their creativity is actually a high value business asset?
Yeah, and even just a career asset. It's
Yeah,
for many people, it's not so much what you do, it's how you do it. And it's not so much what you know, but what you can learn. I think
Mm,
that's one of the best things I gleaned from
beautiful.
music school, and anyone who's played a sport or had some sort of, hobby or, craft or studied the arts, anything like that. It's all of those usual things like deliberate practice and giving and receiving feedback. With classical music or with singing, anything like that. how you sound to yourself is different from how you sound to other people. It's kind of like when you hear your own voice on the phone and you're like,
Oh,
"That
yes.
doesn't sound like me."
Yeah.
And it's a similar thing where, like, you're a resonating body, and so you have to rely on the feedback of other people to understand how you sound. And so you just kinda getting sucks at first. You
It
gotta get a lot
sucks
of
so
feedback.
bad.
You
Yeah.
gotta get a lot of feedback in order to start getting better, but then you do start getting better. And so I think that's a super transferable skill. And I think I personally underestimated my ability to learn things and also my hard-headedness when it comes to, like, I'm gonna learn how to do something, I'm gonna practice at it, I'm gonna get better at it, and that actually ends up being a really useful skill just as different technologies and whatnot come our way. Also looking at the idea that the same skill set in a different industry could be much more lucrative. Um, the analogy I use in the book in the income chapter is, if you've worked in, nonprofit events or something like that, then you know how to run an event. You know how to high pressure event or things like that. Boy, there's I could throw a rock and hit about 10 tech conferences right now, where that would be like a very transferable skill set into something like that. And so not being totally beholden to, that you only ever have to be in one industry, or that the experience that you've had up until now has to only be in one industry. I might just have a bias for that because I had to figure that out immediately. Literally, I got done with school for French horn, and I was like, "Oh, shit, there's no French horn jobs. What the fuck?" And now it's like, and so immediately like, "Okay, well, what else am I gonna do instead?" And yeah, and I also think our interests change as well too. Speaking of French horn, I was catching up with a college friend the other day where she's total prodigy. She won a job while still in college, and she's been in an orchestra this entire time. And she's ready to do something else, and she's scared, She's almost 40, and she's like, this is the only job I've ever had." And it's very specific. And, it's like, how do you I think also when we've been doing something for a long time, it's almost like we get rusty at having to learn new things on the fly, or we lose confidence in ourselves and our ability to try new things and just go out there and learn different things. But for me, some of the risks have fallen flat here and there, but by and large, most of the times that I rolled the dice or took some sort of a
Mhm.
risk, I can look back, and those are the leaps of faith that have gotten me to where I am now.
And it's so important to remember that, like, when we invest in ourselves, there is going to be a layer of risks, right? And I think that, like, that mitigation and understanding what those risks are is paramount in moving forward. But you've been able to somehow simplify it into a digestible way. And I love the way you use this 7 word plan for building wealth, right? So in the book, you talk about this formula that includes lowering expenses, increasing earnings, and invest the difference. It's basically that simple. But you also mentioned doing, like, opulent shit, right? We're part of a world that just loves the immediate gratification of the now. And so in terms of, you know, assuaging the purity culture of, like, mainstream frugality, how do we balance that very real queer need for this now gratification with the boring side character of automation and long-term saving, right? Like, how does that show up?
Yeah, there's so much, like, buzz language around money and around hustle, in the online discourse. So for
I
what I
tried to
focus
put it all in that question. I don't know if you
Yeah,
heard, but
exactly.
I
I
know.
tried to load it with buzzwords for you.
Yeah. It's so the 7-word plan is a lot of what Money Proud centers around, and that is not so much my original idea as it is, from my years in personal finance editing and working as an editor and seeing the different priorities that are consistently covered and that consistently get traffic and that people are consistently interested in learning more about. If you distill all of that down, so regardless of someone's current situation or their current income, things like that, if they wanna change their money situation, there's one of 3 things they could be doing. They could be spending less, they could be lowering their expenses, they could be making more, or they can be adjusting how they're using that leftover money at the end of the month, if there is leftover money at the end of the month. investing that difference. So a lot of the book focuses on getting that delta at the end of each month bigger so that you've got
Mm.
more money left over at the end of the month. So much of personal finance advice is, oh, you got stocks and bonds, this, options, that. And it's like, well, for a lot of people, they don't have any money left over at the end of the month at all. So they can't even start on a lot of these things. And so we got to get to that spot first. And so that's what a lot of the focus is. There's a chapter 3 is about something called saving rate, which is just that's a way to measure how much money you're saving each month. What do you have left over at the end of the month after you've taken care of your taxes and you've taken care of all your essential expenses and things like that? How much are you actually working with each month? And so figuring out what to do with that money, the way I teach it in Money Proud is we have a framework called the saving rate roadmap, and it's about what should you do with that money that you've got left over at the end of each month. And some of it is on the usual suspects, paying down high interest debt and putting money into an emergency fund. But then there's also categories of figuring out what kind of cool, interesting adventures you want to go on. In personal finance, it's called a sinking fund. It's a sinking fund when you know that you're going to spend down all of that money. So you're saving it, you're putting it in a separate savings account, but you're going to blow that shit down the line on something really, like a trip with the boys or again, those floor tickets, or, you're getting every VIP wristband at Pride that is available to you. You're gonna fill the whole arm up if you can. And so,
Say that
whatever it
again?
is, so it's like, that that's coming. And it's also, like, what are we saving the money for? And we've got to balance it out. I interviewed people who had kind of had the opposite problem. They were extremely frugal and they became financially independent early in life. They retired early. They were able to stop working and they had no idea what to do with themselves. They were in their 40s and 50s and they had no friends. They had no hobbies.
Were they
They
happy?
had
Right? Yeah.
yeah, they were kind of miserable in that, and because their whole life had been work, now all of a sudden they didn't have that in their lives anymore, and it kind of, like, created this identity crisis because they didn't know who they were.
Mm.
Their health was flailing as you start to age.
Saying
You're just
gay
not
years.
as yes, oh my god, yes, and so it's just, it's like, just getting out of bed in the morning is like, oh, I feel like I've gone on a hike.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's just that balance I think is really important to strike. And regarding that purity culture note, I talk a little bit about purity culture in the book because I think one reason queer people uh, shy away from the financial stuff is it does feel like this sort of purity, like assimilation,
Mm.
like, please,
Pa
please tone it down.
patriarchal
Yes. Like,
almost?
can you
Yeah.
tone it down, please? Can you
Mhm.
can you stop being so big, so expressive? That's just really not good for the spreadsheet. And I think that there is the balance that we have to strike in that, with opulence and kind of with the origins of that. Um, like opulence was a category. Opulence is like a concept, and so, we can draw inspiration from that, and we can express ourselves in that way. But it's also, it's also real dollars at the end of the month, and so we gotta do it in a way that's sustainable, to where you can still take care of yourself, that we can still take care of each other, and I think there's a way to have both. I really like a both and approach to money. I don't think you have to limit yourself. I just think you gotta be solutions focused and, really face that music and figure out, "Okay, here's where I'm at now. Here's where I wanna go. How am I gonna get there?"
I mean, that realization's so important, but I also think you take an interesting angle on this because in the book you mentioned that being an activist isn't just about marching, it's about money. Right? So you actually have said that cultivating financial independence is one of the most activist things we can do. And so I actually want to unpack that before we move on to our game because I want to understand for our chosen family, like why a healthy 401k or a really bedazzled budget is actually the middle finger to the system versus being patriarchal and kind of, doing what we feel like we have to do. I kind of want you to turn that around a little bit. 'Cause I think that's so interesting.
Part of that activism is simply being able to take care of yourself and also being able to be nimble when, perhaps you're at a job with just a really shitty coworker who's making your life hell. It's just like
I have one here.
level 10.
Hey, I just got that.
And so, I think that, that stability and that, independence, I think is a real piece of that puzzle. The way I teach budgeting in Money Proud is with what you had mentioned, something called the Bedazzled budget. The easiest way to think of it is a cross between a budget and a journal. And so as you're
And a
looking
drag
back,
queen?
yes, you sprinkle in all the drag you want. Absolutely. Yeah, so you're just going back through and you're kinda looking at your numbers and things like that, but I wanna know why you're spending that money on that thing. And for some of our expenses each month, like, the expenses are not categorically bad. Some expenses each month are on things we really enjoy and that we really care about and that they give us community. There's social health, there's physical health, there's spiritual wellness that you might wanna be investing in one way or another. So I don't want you to necessarily limit on those. There's also the impulse buying the third iced Americano of the day because you gotta get this fucking project done. You know what I mean? It's just like
Yeah,
maybe it was bought a little bit out of, reaction
that's
or,
John.
uh,
I intentionally showed up with a homemade iced coffee for this
a
conversation, I
problem.
will have you know.
I made some too, but I made mine at home. Yes. But yeah, I think I just think that if you are, aligned with what you're spending your money on and why you're spending your money on it, like, I interviewed someone for this book who was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna spend $5,000 going to, like, the anime convention, because 'cause I've got the super double VIP and I'm staying in the host hotel, I'm flying there and you know what I mean? And it's just but they loved it. And that would be such a ridiculous expense to other people. They'd be like, "I can't believe you spend money on that." And for that person, it's like, "Why wouldn't I spend money on it?" And it's like, I get to see all of my online friends in person for the year. It's so good for me. And, it fills up our friendships and our relationships for the whole next year to go and do that. So yeah, so I think that's a big piece of it. And I think that taking the time to do that helps you be more intentional. It also helps you fend off things like consumerism where we are just chronically hit with all of this online advertising that, you should want this, you should want that, this is what you should aspire to, you should spend your money on this, you should be doing that, and you start to lose a sense of who you are, you know what I mean? You start to pursue things and want things, not because you actually want them, but because there's so many fucking display ads following you around over the internet, week after week after week that eventually you're like, "Oh, maybe I do want that." And so I like the bedazzled budget exercise as like a journaling exercise that helps you get connected with why you spend money on what you spend it on and whether or not that's actually true to your queer identity, and then making those adjustments accordingly so that you can be in harmony with that.
That is so helpful, Nick. You've truly given us the reading is fundamental portion, and I think I now understand it all. Now, because I made my iced coffee at home, I can go buy my $5,000 Labubu. So thanks. Um,
That's the
no,
whole
but
book, actually. Yeah, that's the thesis.
Yeah, there we go.
in a nutshell, you don't even have to buy it. No, I'm just kidding. But honestly, we're going to turn the tables a bit here because we want to see how fast you can make decisions when the pressure is on. Because it's time to enter the hot seat for a special edition of our favorite game, This or That. We're calling this one This or That, the Money Proud edition. It's time for another round of This or That, the unhinged get to know you game. So Nick, we
Ooh,
just wanna we personalize everything here.
I love
We
it.
just wanna make sure that you don't overthink it and just give us your gut reaction. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. All right, I'll kick it off, today with scruff or no scruff?
On my phone or on my face?
You can tell us however you can answer that however you'd like.
On my face, I've been doing no scruff for a long time, but I'm trying to get into a scruff moment. I've never been able to grow a beard. I'm almost 40. I've never been able to grow a beard. I've
Same.
You and
started.
Brian are in the
I
same
know.
boat.
So
I'm
yeah,
patchy though.
yeah, I'm neck beardy, which I
Mm,
know some guys are into that. I'm not personally, and I'm the one who has to look at this all day.
Yeah,
So
right.
yeah,
do you prefer an index fund or an individual stock?
index fund. Yeah.
Didn't even wait.
No.
I can't have Elon picking his nose determine my retirement. I'm sorry. I need I need some diversity. I need some you know what I mean? I can't have one person go and fuck all this up.
He likes a
Um,
group, guys.
yes, give me the group. 500 preferably.
Mutual funds. Are you a butt guy or a chest guy?
I'm a chest guy.
Hmm, interesting.
That one's 50-50 when we asked that. So,
Yeah?
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I
Well,
mean, after heated
but is so competitive at this point.
I mean,
I feel
after
I
heated
feel like
rivalry, you really can't
I
compete.
don't yeah, I know. I'm just like, "Oh, okay. Guess we're just gonna work on the front
Yeah.
from here on
Yeah,
forward."
we're
I
just
can
gonna
just yeah.
back into a room.
This is
Yeah.
ruined, yeah, and I'll just move to yeah.
Debt-free and single or booked, busy, and in debt?
Ooh,
Mm, this is hard. There's, like, multiple variables. Ooh.
you could change it too. I mean, I would
It's
go
fine. There's no
debt
hard rules here.
debt-free and busy and booked and happy.
I think I would do booked, busy, and in debt.
Yeah.
I know, you heard it here first. Um,
Living.
because it means I'm, like, connecting with people and, yeah, that feels good.
I also don't think debt's a bad thing. Debt can be a healthy thing if you understand how to
Yeah,
manage it, right?
yeah.
So let's take the shame away from the word debt. Um, are you a shower guy or a bath guy?
Shower guy.
Yeah, that one gets a very visceral reaction too. Some people are
Mhm.
really disgusted by a bath.
I am not disgusted by it. I mean, if there's an opportunity to take a bath, I will take one.
Sure.
Um, and yes, I just in the last few places I've lived in, I just haven't had a bath in it, so I'm just so acclimated to showers. Um, but if there's a bath nearby, then I might stumble my way in.
As we're
There's
getting
something
old and
about
laying down's easier.
That
I
too.
I was gonna say I really enjoy all the wet water just spraying all over my face, but that just says a lot more about me than I'm happy to share
Yes,
today,
in
so
more ways than one,
of
yes.
course.
He's debt-free, y'all. Okay. Okay, this was our sports question, Nick. You're playing a baseball game. Are you pitching or catching in the game?
I'm pitching.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
strong arm.
Good
I can s
arm.
very good arm.
Yes. Yeah, in control. I like
In
that.
control.
Are you, when you're traveling, are you a first class upgrade guy or extra week of vacation kinda guy?
Extra week of vacation. Come
Time
on.
is money. Time is money.
Yes. I have a fear of flying. I've always had a fear of flying my whole life, and so it's not so much that I will not fly, but the flight is generally not very pleasant anyway. So I'll be in coach. I'm happy to be in coach and just, to be miserable throughout the flight anyway. Be like, "How's this big metal tube up in the air?" It's even though I've flown hundreds of times at this point, it just goes across my mind. But I mean, extra vacation, come on.
If we ever get there on an airplane, but that's neither here nor there.
Okay, last one. Do you prefer early retirement or work optional gay walking speed?
Work optional gay walking speed. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm
'Cause some
I'm
people
into that.
I mean, if your work has meaning, what if you're doing something you're really passionate about? You know
It's
what I
true.
mean? Also, there's been several studies done, people who retire, they die sooner.
Mhm.
I know that
Mhm.
interesting, yeah.
'Cause their mind.
Yeah, well, and just, I think it's about engagement and that this is not a pro-capitalist statement in any way. It's just kind of an observation that we have to make sure that we have other things going on in our lives other than just work, so that when we get to the point where we're not working anymore, we're not left with this, super empty, hollow existence and start to lose steam. So it's really important to be cultivating a few different things as we go, and if you get to that final number, you get to that retirement goal later as a result of that. I don't know. I just think that's a life well lived.
Yeah, I mean, I it's actually interesting you say that because my parents retired like 2 years ago, and that was the conversation we had is you can stop working, but you can't stop working your mind, right? So it's
Yeah.
making sure you're always doing something, and so they've luckily have navigated that, but, yeah, well said.
Very well said. And, Nick, on behalf of Brian and I both, and of course everybody on listening, we just wanted to thank you so much for being a legend and for giving us and our community this roadmap that I think everybody actually needs. So, Money Proud is the book. It is out now, and trust us, chosen fam, your future self will thank you for buying it. Nick, we're curious. Where can everybody find you and keep up with your power moves?
You can find me online on the interwebs at Nick Wollney. I write a newsletter at nickwollney.com. You can sign up for that. And you can buy Money Proud wherever you buy books online. Or if you are a listener, I read the audiobook. And so, yep, you can listen to me gab at you for hours on end if that's your flavor.
Amazing. Thank you for listening, Chosen Fam. Remember to keep your standards high, your expenses low, mostly, and stay proud. We'll chat soon. Thanks, Nick.
Awesome.
Bye.
Thanks, Nick. Bye, y'all.
This was Out Loud and Laughing.
We're available everywhere you get your podcasts: Spotify, Apple, YouTube, iHeart, or wherever.